Good morning, everyone. Happy February, and for those of you who are celebrating, happy Valentine's Day. Hope you have made your dinner reservations, gotten your flowers. I know I have a couple things I need to do after work. But welcome. You know, we're fortunate. Typically, the February meeting is the one that always gets canceled. And usually by now we have already had, I don't know, 6 feet of snow, and oddly enough this year, it's been quite warm, and let's see, my wife told me this morning it's going to be like 67 degrees this weekend. So I'm not actually sure this is February, but that's what it says on the slide, so we're just going to go with that. So hopefully many of you were able to join us this morning up in the Washington room for coffee and networking. If you weren't able to, we always have an hour before the BRIDG meeting for those folks who are here locally to just come talk to appraisers and NAR staff and have a donut and some coffee and sort of, you know, sort of like pre-gaming before the BRIDG meeting. So I invite you to join us next time when we meet in April up in the Jefferson room. So before we begin today, just a few administrative items. If you have any questions for any of the speakers, I'm being directed to switch the slide. Okay, there's the answer. For those of you online, chat via YouTube or send an email to RM Communications. We have Shannon Olson here in the front. It's monitoring the feeds. For those of you in the room, we have microphones on the aisles, and you know, please wait either for a microphone to be brought to you or come out to the stairs to ask a question. If we don't use the microphone, then we can't make sure that the people who are online can actually hear you. So please identify yourself, the agency that you're from, before you start with your question. So after the meeting, the last administrative note, we always have what we call a meet and greet with the NAR staff, sponsored by the appraisal team. This month, it's sponsored by Appraisal Team 3, and Kate Flaherty and her team will be in the Washington room at 1 o'clock. We generally hold it from 1 to 3. It's very loose, very informal. Just come by if you have any questions. Stop by, and if you are one of the agencies that works with Kate and her team, I encourage you to stick around after lunch. So before we get into the program, one quick thing I wanted to bring to your attention. Many of you probably saw yesterday an email that I sent out asking for some updated information about senior agency officials for records management in your agencies and records officers. So what we're trying to do post-transition is try and get our list as current and up-to-date as we possibly can at this point. And I'm happy to report that less than 24 hours into the call that we sent out yesterday, we've already gotten confirmations from 25 agencies, including 2 new acting SAO RMs. So thank you very much for those of you who sent that information. And I encourage all of you to work within your own agencies as records officers to help get us the information so that we can update those contact lists on our public website. So thank you again for that. So now onto the program. We have a very tight schedule, so I'm probably already overstayed my 5 minutes. Today we have some presentations, and I'll introduce Jay in a second. Then we'll have a presentation from Don Rosen, who's going to talk about oversight and reporting and show you some screen captures of what the website looks like, where we're going to be displaying the information. Then we have Kim Gentili, Director of Civilian Personnel Record Center, who's going to give us an overview of the center's activities. And then finally, hopefully we will still have time, we have Margaret Hawkins, the Director of Records Management Operations at NAR, who's going to talk about our customer satisfaction survey and the results for 2016. I'm not doing good with the slides. So there you go. There's your agenda. And with that, I will introduce Jay Traynor, who's the executive for agency services, to introduce two new staff who have new positions here at the National Archives. Jay?
So, good morning. As Lawrence said, I'm Jay Traynor, the executive for agency services here at the National Archives. NARA is a small agency, but it has a rather large role. Each and every day, we're involved in editing and publishing the Federal Register. Here in this building, you can visit our exhibits and also see the Charters of Freedom. We run the Presidential Library System across the country. But about 45% of all of NARA's staff belongs to agency services and is dedicated to serving the federal agencies of all three branches of the government. So we have a tremendous amount of staff dedicated to those of you that are online and here in the room. We do that through 5 programs. Agency services itself is a very small group. We're about 5 people, but we have about 1,400 people in the 5 programs. Those programs are 2 of that you're very familiar with. The Federal Record Center program is by far the largest program in all agency services and actually also in the National Archives. We're a little over 1,100 FTE in the Federal Record Center program, where we're principally helping you with the storage and servicing of federal records. We also have some scanning services, digitization that we offer to you also, and a host of other services. But you're familiar with the Record Center program because they're here every other month with the BRIDG meeting at the networking session and throughout this program. We also have the Office of the Chief Records Officer, again, one that you're familiar with, where we're helping you with records appraisal, policy, training, etc. Crow, again, is the leader of the BRIDG meetings like the one that we're at today. We also have the National Declassification Center, where we're helping federal agencies review classified material that has been accessioned into the Archives of the United States. Sometimes that review leads to the records being deaccessioned and made available without restriction to researchers. But sometimes that review leads to the records either in total or in part remaining classified. But we also have 2 groups that we're going to have talk to you today. They're the 2 smallest parts of agency services, but they have very mighty missions. The first one is the Information Security Oversight Office. There we, in December, the last week of December, we picked up a new director. That position had been vacant for... That one, we picked up the new director in late December. That position had been vacant for almost a year. It had become vacant in January of 2016. But we're very glad to welcome on board Mark Bradley. Mark will be up here in a little bit talking to you about ISOO. But Mark comes to us with a varied background that he can get into, but more recently he was with us at the Department of Justice, working on a lot of FOIA and classification issues, was viewed as a technical expert for ISOO, but also is someone that will help with us engaging the staff of ISOO, where we're helping the federal agencies across the government in all 3 branches with the classification issues, but also with the new controlled unclassified information program that we have in ISOO. Last but not least within agency services is the Office of Government Information Services, OGIS. That's where we help agencies with the mediation of FOIA disputes, but we also do oversight of agencies and their FOIA operations, and we also interact with the White House and Congress on any recommendations that need to be made to the FOIA law. And the new director there came on board in early December, and that's Alina Simo. Alina's going to be up here in a moment to give you a lot of details about OGIS, but Alina, for the last few years, has been with us here at the National Archives in our Office of General Counsel, handling our litigation efforts, but leading into other things like FOIA. And she's an expert in the law of FOIA, has come on board at the beginning of December, and is already up and running with the mediation and oversight responsibilities of OGIS. And with that, let me have Alina come up and talk to you about OGIS. Thank you.
Okay, right arrow. Got it. Good morning, everyone. There's a lot of bright lights up here. So I'm told that if I do that, it'll move things forward. I am here to talk to you today about the Federal FOIA Ombudsman. OGIS is our acronym. Of course, every good government agency has to have an acronym. We were created by the 2007 Open Government Act of 2007, and we have two primary functions that are divided into two areas. I'll discuss that a little more in more detail. We provide dispute resolution services to resolve FOIA disputes, and we review agency FOIA policies, procedures, and compliance. We serve as the FOIA Ombudsman. We serve our customers as an independent, impartial, and confidential resource to help requesters and federal agencies resolve process issues arising from the administration of FOIA requests. And I'll talk to you a little more about where we fit into the process in a second. I should say I came on board in December. As Jay Traynor mentioned earlier, I have been with the National Archives since March of 2014. I came on board as the Director of Litigation. Gave me a great opportunity to get to know the agency. I was at the FBI for almost 15 years before that, and before that at Maine Department of Justice in the Civil Division. Sort of touched FOIA throughout my legal career, I suppose. And this was a good natural segue, and I'm very excited to be the new director. I have a great staff, although we're a little short-staffed right now. So I'm really going to talk to you about what's new. I don't want to bore you with old stuff. We're going to sort of move forward. The exciting thing that happened in 2016 was that there was a statutory amendments to the Freedom of Information Act. And traditionally, about every 10 years or so, we get amendments. And we were lucky enough to have the FOIA Improvement Act of 2016 signed into law by President Obama on June 30th, and it took effect July 1st. And it not only preserved OGIS's existing role as a non-exclusive alternative to litigation, but it explicitly requires agencies to notify requesters of the availability of OGIS services during 2 points in the FOIA administration process, and that's the new twist. First, when agencies take additional time to respond due to unusual circumstances. That includes a number of places where they need to go search, the fact that they need to consult with various offices or other agencies, or when agencies provide an initial response to a request with an adverse determination. So this is before an appeal has been filed, an administrative appeal. So I'm a visual person, so I love the next 3 slides. I'm very excited about them. As you can see, our caseload is going up. Even before the 2016 FOIA Improvement Act, requests for our assistance had already increased. You can see the numbers from 836 between October 2014 and June 2015 to 968 between October 2015 and June 2016. After the FOIA Improvement Act went into effect, our 4th quarter caseload of 787 cases was more than double from the 325 cases we had in the fourth quarter in fiscal year 2015. So definitely things are very busy. And I think this slide also demonstrates that. Post FOIA Improvement Act, we have created a third queue of cases. We call them complex mid cases, which we open when a requester reaches out for assistance before or during the pendency of their administrative appeal. Out of our three queues, we have a simple one and a complex one. The complex mid queue has grown the most quickly, so that's giving us the most business right now. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about our compliance functions. During fiscal year 2016, we completed and published 3 agency FOIA compliance assessments. We were in DHS land for Transportation Security Administration, Customs and Border Protection, and U.S. Secret Service. They're published on our website. We also published a report on agencies' use of still interested letters. And we launched a self-assessment program, an online survey designed to help agency FOIA programs identify areas for improvement and give FOIA managers information they need to address issues, launch strategies to improve their FOIA programs. In this fiscal year, we are already planning to have 2 agency assessments of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau and the U.S. Postal Service. We're looking for a 3rd volunteer. Looking around the audience, any volunteers, please see me afterwards. We definitely would love to come and visit your agency, but it is voluntary right now, so we're not going to force you into this, but we would love participation. So if anyone is interested, please let me know. Another aspect of compliance is review of FOIA regulations government-wide. Since fiscal year 2011, OGIS has worked to strengthen FOIA regulations throughout the federal government. We've provided comments to FOIA regulations for 3 cabinet-level departments, DHS, Interior, and State, as well as the National Council on Disability. That was this past fiscal year, 2016. And then another new thing that the FOIA Improvement Act of 2016 brought for us is a requirement for agencies to review their FOIA regulations and issue any amendments that comport to the new amendments. That includes a longer appeal period and additional language to specify that OGIS can be used as a resource along with the FOIA public liaisons at 2 different stages in the FOIA process, the unusual circumstances as well as immediately following an initial response. So we've been very busy reviewing all of these new agency FOIA regs. They were supposed to be in no later than December 31, 2016. About less than 50% of federal agencies have published amendments to date, so 50% are still working on them. And we are suggesting comments as each one goes forward. I also just wanted to mention the FOIA Improvement Act of 2016 amends Section 3102, the Federal Records Act. And you guys can read up there what it says. I'm not going to read it. It goes hand in hand with other amendments within the statute which require subjects of subsequent requests to be, for the same material to be posted, as well as information that has been requested 3 or more times to be posted. So I just wanted to make you aware of that. So strong records management is essential for a successful FOIA program. So I appreciate the opportunity to speak in front of you today. In 2016, we worked with NARA's Records Management Oversight Team to add some FOIA questions to the RMSA program, and we're really excited about that. We've developed and included questions related to your individual agency FOIA programs. There are 12 of them, questions 26 through 37. I know you've already all answered them. They may require consultation. If you're not the same person as the FOIA officer, you may need to consult with your FOIA officer in your agency. So what are we going to do with all those responses? We're going to review them, compile them, and to hopefully some meaningful data that we can post. We're also going to use the results to try to understand government-wide trends and target issues that merit further follow-up by OGIS for the compliance team. I also wanted to highlight the fact that OGIS offers dispute resolution training. Generally twice a year. It's free, so it's always a nice thing. I always am told they fill up very, very quickly. The next one is scheduled for Tuesday, April 18th, here at Archives 1, and encourage everyone to think about signing up as quickly as possible. And we also offer agency-specific training at the request of agencies. So next month, we're providing agency-specific training to the FOIA folks at the State Department. My plug for Sunshine Week 2017. This, as most of you know, is an annual nationwide celebration of open government centered around President James Madison's birthday. It is an opportunity to celebrate access, promote transparency, collaboration, and participation. In 2016, OGIS did its first Sunshine Week event, and we were very pleased to have nearly 400 participants. We had several thought-provoking presentations and panel discussions. We're once again going to host it this year on Monday, March 13th, from 1 to 4:30 p.m. It's going to be right here where you're sitting. And for those of you watching, come on into McGowan Theater. We've been very busy pulling together some very exciting agenda events, so we really hope you're going to be able to join us. My second to last slide is just a nice little visual of our staff. As you can see, we're divided up into a mediation team and a compliance team, which fits nicely within the statutory requirements of FOIA for OGIS's tasks. We do have a couple vacancies in our mediation team and one in our compliance team. We hope to be able to fill those one day. And last slide is contact information. It's all here. And I believe you're also going to have the PowerPoints available to you, so you can make that available. I see questions. No? No questions. I see no questions. Okay. Well, thank you very much for your time, and I'll be around if anyone has any questions. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. It'd be technically checked out there. I'm an historian and a lawyer by background. I'm Mark A. Bradley. I'm the new head of the Information Security Oversight Office. As Jay said, I come from the Department of Justice. 16 years there, where I worked in everything from the U.S. Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, tracking terrorists and spies, to developing intelligence policy, to working on and at Guantanamo Bay. Before that, I was on the Hill. I was Senator Daniel Patrick Moynihan's legislative director, where we worked a lot on classification, declassification. And then before that, I was a criminal defense lawyer here in the district, handling everything from misdemeanors to murder. And then before that, CIA, mostly in Pakistan. So I have kind of an eclectic background. Maybe that's why I was selected to head up what I call the oddest, the spookiest, but the most interesting part of the National Archives. By that, I mean we in ISU report to the President of the United States. We tell him about how the government's doing in classifying and declassifying national security information. I think that's our most important task. We also oversee the National Industrial Security Program, and also, as Jay mentioned, this new one, controlled unclassified information. But let me get to some of the slides before I get too far ahead. Let me give you just a bit of the history of this office. It's interesting. As you'll see, it was created in 1978 under an executive order. Actually, it existed before then. It was created by all people, the antecedents were, by Richard Nixon in 1972. Although perhaps that's not as odd as it sounds, there are historians who believe that Nixon would be a Democrat now. I don't know whether I believe that, but anyway, what was happening is the Vietnam War was creating more classified information than we could deal with. So the idea was some office had to be created to be able to handle this type of flood. So anyway, it starts off in the White House. In 1973, though, it's moved to the National Archives, which at that time was part of the GSA. And it was with us, but it was meeting in the White House. In fact, it met in the Roosevelt Room up until 1975. In 1975, though, three things are happening in this country. It's being torn apart by the Vietnam War. It's being ripped apart again by Watergate, and also by something called the Church Committee, which is investigating the abuses of the U.S. intelligence community, especially on American citizens. You know, there were FBI was spying on Dr. King. CIA was in assassination plots. I mean, there was a lot of misgivings about what our intelligence community was doing. So anyway, the idea was, you know what, when Jimmy Carter came into office, that perhaps the ISOO ought to be taken out of the White House, put over here in the National Archives, and be given a more robust responsibility, i.e. kind of a neutral player. I call us the umpires of this world, where balls and strikes place. I mean, nonpartisan, obviously, but we try to give agencies and the president the best guidance we can on which should be classified and which should be declassified. Now, you notice those dual roles. They're very interesting to me because they kind of come at the heart of who we are as an American people. Thomas Jefferson said that the best populace is the one that's most educated. And by that, he meant educated about what its own government was doing. On the other side of the coin, though, you know, we are in a very, very dangerous environment. I mean, we have all sorts of foes, both in the counterintelligence world and in the counterterrorism world, who would do us great harm. So how much information to release to the public, how much information to withhold from the public? I think that's our most important role that we do. It's also a huge responsibility. And, you know, there are all sorts of different interpretations about that. You'll have an interest community that says this. You'll have a classification community like the IC in the military who wants this. So we're constantly trying to give the best advice that we can. Now you see here we have a panoply of executive orders that we operate under. There are 5. And so they cover a wide gamut. I mean, the National Security Information System, again, is how the federal government classifies and declassifies information. I mean, that is an enormous task. National Industrial Security Program. What that means is we have a lot of classified information that goes out to contractors. You know, and if you remember, I mean, the 2 greatest breaches we've had as of late have been by Edward Snowden and recently the one at the NSA that just was announced in the paper this week. Both of those gentlemen were contractors. Both of them worked for Booz Allen. So who's minding the store to make sure the information is being properly handled there? Controlled unclassified information is our latest venture. It is another mammoth thing because it covers 153 different federal agencies, not to mention over 100,000 contractors. Believe it or not, the U.S. government marks information in over 100 different ways when it's sensitive but not classified. You'll have things like FOIA, law enforcement sensitive. The question is, you know, how do we standardize this? So this is why this program came into being. You'll see the Classified National Security Information Program for state, local, and tribal. All right, the federal government, because of the events of 9/11, are sharing more information to our state and local partners. Again, they're not accustomed to dealing with classified information. That's a federal responsibility. So how do they protect this information, but also be able to use it to combat our foes? So again, we're trying to instruct them on how to do that and make sure that they're properly handling this information. Also, too, you know, I mean, how many of you all received letters from OPM when the breach happened, had security clearances? Yeah, okay. That's this one. We're trying to make sure that doesn't happen again, as is the CUI. So again, you know, we are a very busy office. I tell Jay all the time that we box above our weight. I think several classes. Again, how do we do what we do? Again, we develop all sorts of directives. We go out to the agencies. In fact, I'm in the process now, as the Trump administration comes online, meeting more of the cabinet level officials to let them know, number one, who we are, and 2, what we do. It's interesting, you know, how many administrations classified information is new to them. It's a different culture, especially if you come out of the business world and things like that. So again, doing what I call missionary work to be able to say, look, you know, there are these executive orders and you are bound by them. And for God's sakes, if you have any questions, please come to us for interpretation. Lastly, this one here is particularly important. Recommend policy changes. Almost every administration that I have been through has wanted to change some of the executive orders, and I would be surprised if this one's any different, especially on 13526, which governs how we classify and declassify information. So we are in the process now of beginning to crank up to be able to advise the president on what we think the new executive order should look like and any reforms that it might need. Again, it is incumbent upon us as the experts in this to be the first asked. And you'll see that we take our marching orders from the National Security Council. So we worked very closely with whether you all knew John Fitzpatrick. He was a person, nobody succeeds Fitzpatrick. You just kind of slide into his chair. He was inimitable. But anyway, we take our marching orders from the National Security Council. Now, as of late, the government's still kind of coming online, so the orders are still being awaited. But in the meantime, we're not sitting still. We're moving forward, coming up with ideas and plans. So when they do come to us, we'll be ready to act. All right, move on to some of the next. Oversight authority, again, if you notice, that's in our name. If I had one thing to say that we did, that's probably it. By that, we visit a lot of these agencies and look at their programs to make sure that they're being done correctly. We just had a team go out to the Defense Intelligence Agency yesterday. Last week we were doing the U.S. Transportation Department. So, I mean, I don't think there's a week that goes by that we don't have a team out in the field looking at how these programs are being implemented. So it's good because it gets our folks out of the office. It gets them to actually see how difficult it is. You may have a policy, but when you actually implement it, Senator Moynihan always said, he said, you can't understand the limits of government until you've actually served in the government. And so by going out and doing these reviews, we're seeing that some of our ideas are excellent, and some of them we need to tweak and to come back and reform. So it's a very organic process. It's not just, look, here's a rule and that's it, you've got to follow it. I mean, we're open to having things changed and discussed. I mean, this is, again, we all work for the same government. Goals are the same. Again, protect the information we have to, get rid of the information we don't, and try to educate our citizens as best we can. All right, again, we've got 3 different groups that do this. Classification management, you can see what it's responsible for. I don't want to take a lot of time on this. The first 2 are interesting. The ICECAP is a federal-wide appeals panel. The people who sit on that, I used to do it for the Department of Justice, the Justice, State, Defense, the DNI, NARA, the National Security Council. What it does is it decides and adjudicates classification appeals under the executive order. And it's one of the more interesting boards we have because it actually spends a lot of time. In fact, today it's meeting from 9 o'clock until 3 o'clock looking at appeals that requesters send in to decide as an expert whether or not the agency's decision should be upheld. It is remarkable how much information is released to the public through this process. In fact, I think it's one of the most valuable things the National Archives does. It is a remarkable body. Works upon the 5th floor where our SCIF is, Security Department of Information Facility. Public Interest Declassification Board, I actually co-wrote the legislation that created that board. I tell Jay all the time, I feel like Victor Frankenstein. I create these things, and then years later I'm still working with them or still saddled with them. This one, though, there is a huge tsunami wave of classified information out there. And what we decided to do was let's create a board of experts who could help us kind of prioritize what information should be declassified first. And so what this board does is it formulates policies to be able to do that. It's to try to bring some order to this process. So you have something called automatic declassification, which President Clinton put in, and it gets a lot of information out, but the critics of it say that too much of the information, although classified, is not very valuable. This board's job is to actually kind of look for the crown jewels and what the American people would be most interested in. It's a bipartisan board. The president appoints some members and also both houses of Congress from both sides of the aisle. So when we created it, we wanted to have something that was completely, how should we put this, politically neutral as possible, but to get the best experts we could. Yeah. just said that. Okay, yeah. This one here, again, is you think about how much information the government gives to contractors. I mean, the first great wave of American classified information going to contractors came in World War II. That was when we were able to really turn our economy out of the Great Depression into being able to win the war against the Japanese and the Germans. And what we did that by our American industrial might. And so we realized how important it was to bring private industry into national security. The problem is, though, that there are probably 300-some-thousand contractors out there who have access to this stuff. And so it is very important that it be handled properly. So we are constantly visiting corporations, and also by chairing these various committees. In fact, I just finished one, actually two, over the last 2 weeks, where we bring together the presidents of some of the biggest corporations in the United States and talk about how they're handling, or God forbid, mishandling classified information. Again, it is a very important role here, because this is one of our not only greatest assets, but also potentially one of our greatest vulnerabilities. And again, as I mentioned, the last two breaches have come from the private sector, not from inside. Doesn't mean we haven't had our own, but it's just interesting how some of this stuff can be cyclical. Yeah, more of that. Okay, this last one, again, is just coming online. It was actually a Bush administration initiative. President Obama actually formalized it in 2010. And now we're actually at the stage of beginning to implement it. It is an enormous undertaking because a lot of these agencies have been very accustomed to marking information as they wish. Now again, it's not classified, but it's still sensitive enough where there is a good case to be made why it shouldn't be publicly available. It doesn't stop it from a FOIA claim, but it does give it some protection. Most importantly, the standardized procedure we're trying to establish allows government agencies to share the information with each other. Right now, if you're in Department of Commerce and you get something marked by somebody in Treasury, those markings may not mean anything in Commerce because Commerce doesn't have the same markings. So nobody knows what to do with the information. So it creates a rather chaotic situation. So we're trying to corral some of this and bring some order to it so we can, again, preserve it, protect it, but also equally important, share it. I mean, it's kind of the yin and yang of ISOO. I mean, we share and we protect. We share, protect, share. It's almost, I wouldn't say schizophrenic, but you've got to be able to think in a couple of different ways. The executive agent is me, so you can see what we're trying to do now. We just had our rule published. So we were actively out in the field, beginning to set this thing up. Yeah, contact information, that is where we are. I'm down on the, I guess, the second floor, mezzanine. I've got a staff of right now about 29. We're always looking for good talent. If you want to go into a spooky realm, but exciting, and I think one of the most interesting things that we do here is probably in the office that I have the privilege to lead. So with that, any questions? Sir.
I'm Tim Osimi from the National Indian Gaming Commission, and I did see the memo or the information coming out. It was from your office, and for the unclassified, trying to get your hands around or your arms around the unclassified, all the different parts in there. I was talking with an attorney in our agency about it, and we get confidential information from tribes. It has to do with gaming and. Sure. And commercial confidential information, and it's covered under actually the law or statute. But is that what you're aiming for, or is it? We got the part about sharing. It seemed like that was clear what one of your concerns was. But is this kind of geared towards national security type of stuff?
It's both. It's both. It's sharing and national security. It's not classified, but again, there's. How many of you have ever heard of the mosaic theory? Okay, yeah, good. You know what, you get enough unclassified information and put it together that something can be quite sensitive. Again, I'm not saying that the idea of this program is to classify more information. In fact, it's the contrary. It's just to make sure that there's some safeguards to it. So it's both. If you want to give me a call or talk after this week, we can talk more about this. And we'd even be glad to give you a briefing. How about that? Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome. Anything else? Right? Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Before we move on, we had one YouTube question from the previous presentation about the Sunshine Day presentations, or Sunshine Week. Will they be streamed on the NARA YouTube channel, like folks are watching Bridge now?
Honestly, I'm not sure. I think the answer is yes, but
Okay.
I will double check on that.
Okay, in case the microphone didn't pick it up, she said she's not sure. She thinks the answer is yes, but she'll double check.
Okay, thank you, Alina. Thank you, Mark. And thank you, Jay. So I am going to just very quickly bring up Don Rosen and reintroduce him to the group. So Don is the Director of Records Management, Oversight, and Reporting. He's going to talk to you a little bit about the SAORM reports, the RMSA, and the website, and how we're going to display a lot of this information so that you can access it. Don?
Thank you, Lawrence. Good morning. So when I was here last in December, we talked about getting ready for the reporting period, which is going to start on January 9th, and the three things that we're going to do this year: the records management self-assessment, the email management report, which is our new report this year, and of course the senior agency official for records management report. We are now well into the reporting period, so hopefully everyone is getting ready or started that. We know, based on some of the information in our tool, that many of you are already underway doing all the different reports. So we are probably at the halfway mark. The deadline is March 17th, so I just wanted to kind of quickly reiterate some of the deadlines we're looking for, and then how we're going to be displaying the information on our website this year, and then where you can, of course, get any additional information as you work through this reporting period with us. So again, reporting deadline is March 17th. So we're about to have 6-7 weeks away, 5-6 weeks. So that is our deadline. And what are we expecting this year? That includes the senior agency official report for records management, the self-assessment, and the federal email management report. Hopefully, you have already received either the Qualtrics links and the template for the SAO report. So if you have not, please contact us immediately. We will work with you to make sure you have it. If for some reason you didn't get any of those, you didn't get the links to do the RMSA and the email report, or you did not receive the SAO template, let us know and we will get that to you ASAP. And our staff was available to get that to you immediately. We want you to get started, have enough time to complete it. But hopefully that's not the case for anybody, and everyone has it. So what are we doing? So our plan is, once we start getting them in, we will start posting both the SAO report and the email management reports on our website. That's similar to last year where we started posting the SAO reports. We're also going to post the email management reports. The RMSA, as you know, we do an annual roll-up report. Some report, we hope to have that out probably in the summer. It takes us a few months to collect all the information, analyze the data, and put out a report. But I do hope to come back probably on our next BRIDG meeting, and I'll start to talk about what are the trends that we're finding, give you like a high level where we're at, and report more detailed as we finalize that report. We'll do the same thing. We'll do a roll-up SAO report, and we'll also do the same thing for the email management, so everyone can see the trends in the data in addition to your individual reports and scores. So we will do that as well. So what we are doing is we do post on our website, and we have been making some changes to our website to make it a little easier to find some of our reporting and oversight activities for us, so we're excited about that. Here's a snapshot of our records management page, and if you see off to the right, there is a new button that says Records Management Oversight and Reporting. So that is our program. And also off to the left, there's a button for senior agency officials, which has been there, but the new thing is the Oversight and Reporting. And if you clicked on that link, that would take you to our Oversight Reporting Program page. So very excited that we have this page a little more prominently displayed. If those of you who have not been here, we keep links to the inspection reports that we do and all the other reporting activities. You can find the RMSA reports, the SAO reports, and you also will find your email manager reports here as well as we post them. So if you're looking for anything we've done, this is where you'd find it. So if you've been a part of an inspection, you would find it here. Click on that link. So for example, this is, if you clicked on the SEO reports, it would take you to this page here where you would see the list of all the agencies, and if your report was there, it would be hyperlinked, and you click on it and it would pop up a report. So for example, if you clicked on an agency, you clicked on it, it would pop up, the template would be there in PDF form that you completed. Just like last year, look very similar. There are no differences. We're doing the process the same way. So that's what it will look like, and you should see exactly as you expect to see it. For the email management reports, obviously this is a new product for us, but it looks very similar, the page we constructed, to the SEO reports. Same thing, you'll see all the agencies listed. Click on the agency and it will pop up the maturity model tool that you took. A couple of those slight differences in the fact that those of you who have actually already completed it in our Qualtrics tool, you get an immediate email back to you what it looks with the completed report. And we're going to post it similarly, but we did a little bit of cleanup because if you notice that those are completed already, it gives you a little extra system type information that we don't think was necessary to post online. But we're going to go ahead and send you that clean version once we get it ready to post it. It will almost be like our verification back to you, so you'll have that copy as well. None of the data has changed. We just kind of cleaned it up so some of that system stuff is not displaying. So you'll have that as well. And we're going to be posting them as PDFs, and they'll be online. So here's an example of what it looks like. So those of you who have not done the email manager report, it follows the template that we sent out. You'll answer the question. The way the system generates it, it puts a blue bar for the area you selected with your number, and then it rolls it up and it gives you your overall score. So very simple, only 4 questions there. So, and we'll post them. We're already starting to get a few in. So not tons, but they're starting to slowly come in. We expect to see quite a bit more in the next couple of weeks. And then this, as you might also receive, I think started yesterday, the system has probably been sending out reminders to you. It's automatically generated to take the email management report. Our Qualtrics does it automatically. I think every 2 weeks it will do that for you. So just so you know, you're going to get these system generated reminders. And if we don't, then we'll probably start calling as well, potentially as we get closer to the deadline. So just be aware of that. We're hoping to have 100% compliance. As you know, as I mentioned in the past, we had 100% for the RMSA and the SEO report, and we're looking to have that again this year. So we really appreciate all the effort everyone puts into getting these reports done for us. We know it's a lot of work we're asking. One more, of course, the RMSA. That's also on that page. Again, that'll look very similar to the past. Once we have the 2016 report done, we will post it, and there'll be a link to it. And of course, we keep every RMSA report that we've done all on our website going back to 2009. So if you're interested to see how an agency did or how you did previously, they're all there for you as well, the summary reports. So if you need any assistance during the reporting period, please feel free to contact us. We're here to help. If you have any issues regarding the Qualtrics, the system we're using to capture the information, which would be the RMSA or the email management report, you can send any questions to our RM self-assessment at nara.gov email address, and our staff monitors it all day. We'll get back to you with any questions you have. And then if anything regarding the SEO report, SEO designations, we have our prmd at nara.gov email address you can send questions to. Again, we'll be happy to answer anything you need. And then finally, of course, you're welcome to contact anyone on our team. Myself, feel free to send me an email, call me, or Cindy Smolovic, who's leading a lot of our reporting activities. And of course, Evangeline Wimbush-Jeffrey, also part of our team. We're here to help you with any questions you have during the reporting period or any other oversight activities, any questions about inspections, our unauthorized disposition program, anything we're doing, feel free to contact us. So just wanted to give that reminder, let everyone know, March 17th. So between now and our next BRIDG meeting, that will pass, and hopefully I'll be back in April to kind of give some high-level summary of where we think we're at. So with that, any questions about the reporting period we're in right now? Any online?
No, but they are about 45 seconds.
Okay, we can wait a minute. No questions. So everyone should be on target, and we look forward to receiving all the reports. We think it's going to be really interesting, especially those email management reports. So thank you for all your participation in that. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Don. So we have a new presenter here in person, and we haven't actually met in person either. Kim Gentile is going to talk about what's going on at the National Civilian Personnel Record Center and some of the activities there, and give us an overview of what's going on in St. Louis, right? Yes. All right, welcome, Kim.
Thank you. All right, thank you, everyone. I appreciate being here today. The Civilian Personnel Records Program is under the Federal Record Center program. We're also part of the National Personnel Record Center program. In the National Personnel Record Center program, we're the central repository for all of the personnel records for military and civilian service. At CPR, for civilian, we basically have the civilian records personnel. Our mission is make access happen. We do thousands of requests through the years for loans and transfers of folders and copies of documents and requests for information. The Civilian Personnel Record Center is in Valmeyer, Illinois. We're right outside St. Louis. Our headquarters, the National Personnel Record Center, is in St. Louis, so we're 50 miles away within driving distance. Our facility's in a limestone cave, so we're one of the cave facilities within the Federal Record Center program. So it's kind of exciting for us and our staff to work in a building such as that. Still looks like a regular building. You're going to have an office area just like anybody else, but you may get a rock wall that you can be excited about and tell your family that you work in a cave. Our facility was constructed in 2008. We had 8 bays. We added 3 more bays in 2009. We have a total available storage of 2.5 million cubic feet. And our office area can support about 100 staff members because a lot of our members are in and out of the bays pulling records. You might wonder, how do you get around in a bay? We go back a half a mile into the cave. So if you're going to run for a quick record, that's a long walk. So we have 3-wheel bikes that our staff can use, or if you're out for a full day and you're going to be getting a lot of records, there's a basket so you could put your records in there. The folders that we hold, our holdings, include the employee medical folders. They're temporary records currently with a 60-year retention. We have the official personnel records from 1974 forward, and those are scheduled temporary currently as well with 65-year retention. Prior to 74, those are held at our main facility in St. Louis because part of those have been transferred to the archives, and the others are permanent records, and they are not yet transferred. But we are able to service those records that are permanent by our daily courier that runs back and forth between the 2 buildings. We also hold pay records for various agencies. We also hold military treatment records and dependent medicals. Because those are the military records, requests for information are received at the military facility. They work those requests, but we pull the records and we courier them daily. OPFs and EMFs. We don't just transfer in boxes of OPFs and EMFs. We have a registry for those. It's called the CPR registry. It's currently housed in ARCIS. It was previously in NARS 5, but this system allows us to manage the records on a folder or civilian level. OPFs and EMFs don't require an SF-135. You just send the folders to us with a manifest. All work is done on a folder level, civilian level, because people will come in and want those records, or they have a request for copies, and so we go at it just from a civilian level. The ARCIS registry also includes the owner of the record and who submitted that record to us. We do different things with the OPFs and EMFs. Of course, when they come in on a paper basis, we'll validate the incoming records to the manifest. We identify the submitting agency and the owner of the record. Then we key the folder data into the registry. We label the OPF and EMF and then we shelve in registry number order. So if we get a question that are all of my folders in one location for a certain agency, the answer would be no, because as your staff retires or separates, we're going to put them in a registry, and then they will be shelved accordingly. But we will pull them by the civilian's social, and we find them in the registry location. We also receive electronic transfers of EOPFs. OPM's electronic OPF, we have an MPRC instance, just like agencies have their own instance. This is basically our electronic storage, like we would have a bay for paper. We have the MPRC instance for the electronic records, so we do receive those as well. We provide loan and transfer to federal agencies. If you need to pull a folder for a civilian that might be coming back to work for you, EOPF, if you are on the EOPF system, you would put that request in through the system. We would pull either the electronic record or pull a paper if we have one. Paper agencies will submit the request on a 127 or 184, and all folders are sent out double wrap, tracked UPS or USPS, so we can ensure that you do receive them, and if there are any issues, we can address it through the carrier. We also provide requests for information from separated civilians or third parties or FOIA requests. Civilians may not have kept a copy of their last SF-50, so they'll contact us to get a copy of that. They may want a complete copy of their record, or when it comes time for retirement, they may ask for information that isn't housed by their current agency. We work both paper and EOPF records. Storage, once again, we've almost filled up our 2.5 million cubic feet of storage. We continue to do things to have storage available for incoming records, just like a regular bay, if you've ever seen any at the other record centers. However, we have big pillars in our bays, so our staff work around those pillars. We do focus on service time to customers. When you request a folder, you need it for a reason, so we want to make sure we get those to you. Requests for records are received and searched. Our goal is 1 day. We get it to the mailroom, and the mailroom enters the tracking data and provides the package to the shipper. We're at about 98% turnaround of 1 day for our cycle time there. Our public requests, we get requests for copies. We search those, we make the copies. Our goal is 10 days or less to the mailroom. We also get requests for information or transcript of service. Those we will also receive, search, and do the transcript of service. The goal is 10 days or less to the mailroom. Currently, we're about 6 days on those, so we are under the 10-day goal. Our mailroom will post it and then hand it off to the shipper. We do provide digitization services. We meet the agency's needs, sit down and talk about what the agency's looking for, and then work with them and our technical experts to do that project. Projects we've completed or are ongoing. We did several agencies' official personnel folders when they were converting to EOPF. We currently digitize interfiles or trailing documents to EOPF if a record was transferred to us and there were some documents that were left behind. Those will come and we'll digitize and upload those. We're working on service treatment records for the Coast Guard. We've done some aperture cards and we've done ID cards. So it can be an ongoing project or something that's a one-time project. The one thing we do that agencies have gotten used to since FY 11 is stratified billing. Prior to that, the cost for services were basically paid for by USPS, OPM, but in 11 we made a change so that the cost was going to the agency who generated the work. So services generated by an agency will result in charges through national billing, but storage charges are borne by the owner of the record. So if you're an OPM agency, USPS, or if you're non-Title V, not under OPM's record-keeping authority, those are the agencies that pay the storage. The basic premise behind stratified billing is that if the work is sent or generated by an agency, it will be billed to the agency. If the work is generated by a civilian employee, authorized by them, or as a FOIA, it's billed to the owner of the record. So agencies that are under OPM's record-keeping authority will not see charges for civilian employee requests because OPM owns the record and they're being billed for that. Storage is billed to the owner of the record as well. And just as an FYI, EOPF charges currently are being charged to the EOPF data warehouse program, and they in turn will pass off any charges that they've agreed with their customer agencies. So if you're a non-record owner, your typical charges are going to be transfers in, OPS and EMFs that your Human Resource Office sends to us, loans and transfers if they need a paper folder or an EMF, we will charge for that, or a refile of return folder. Also, if it's a restricted agency who does not release their folders and you need a transcript of service, you'll see the charge for that, or if you have any form completion or pay records, you may see a charge for that. But the typical charges are just sending folders in, loans and transfers, and then refiles. But if you own the record, you'll get the same similar charges, but you'll also get storage charges, and you'll get charges for separated civilian or public requests. So those would be, if you're an OPM agency, OPM would be the record owner, and they would pay for that. Postal does theirs as well, or any non-Title V. So key reminders, do not send us any classified records, please. We do not house classified records. Send your folders by track mail, double wrap. You don't want to have those split in the postal carrier and then we lose that folder. Include a manifest for your incoming records. That'll allow us to validate that everything's been received. We go through your list and we make sure that we've received everything. Include your full agency name, your address, and a contact name and telephone number on all your manifests and on your 127s and 184s. We have contact information. If you have questions about transfers, you can contact our transfer group. You can fax your requests, 127s, 184s to us. And if you need a status check, you can always check with our reference group. Any questions that you may have, feel free to contact me and we will get you with the right person to help you. And most of all, thank you for letting us serve you. Our staff members are really proud of the work they do. They're very concerned about getting you the information you need in a timely manner, so we thank you for doing your record storage with us. So, any questions?
Hi, Greg Schildmeyer with the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. I was a little confused at the beginning when you were talking about some records being permanent and some being 65-year.
Right. The records after 1974 are considered temporary records currently, so they will have a life and could potentially be disposed. I think the 65-year is being reviewed, but prior to 1974, there are records that have a lot of historical information in those, so those were considered permanent. Some of those have been transferred to the archives. The others are awaiting transfer. So those are permanent records that will not be disposed.
Online question from Patty Stockman, the NASA Records Officer. She said, so far, St. Louis has been unable to accept oversized medical x-ray records. Will your new facility or new base be able to accept large size x-rays?
No, we don't accept those. Sorry. And if she has any questions, we can reach out to her and see if there's any help we can give her.
Hi, Mike Skipper with National Archives. Are any of the permanent records, the older pre-74, have any of those been digitized? Are they electronic at all, or are they all paper?
No, none of the older OPFs have been digitized as yet.
Just curious. Thank you.
Is that Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Kim. It was nice to meet you. Someday I'll actually make it out to St. Louis and we can have a tour of the caves. So our last presentation, we're doing really well on time. I'll bring up Maggie Hawkins. It says Margaret on the slide, but we only say Margaret when we're really displeased with her. We all know her as Maggie. So Maggie's going to talk about the customer satisfaction survey that we do every other year and the results that we have now summarized from 2016 and give you an overview. And Alina will be pleased. There's lots of charts and graphs for you to look at. So with that, I will turn it over to Maggie.
Thank you. And as Lawrence noted, we have a lot of time. I was warned I wouldn't have a lot of time, so I had planned on moving through this very rapidly. So I will, I'll slow down a little bit. So as Lawrence mentioned, we every couple of years we do a customer satisfaction survey. This is our 2016 results. And in the past, this survey was focused exclusively on the area of appraisal and scheduling. But as the years went by, we were getting a lot in the comment sections about other parts of the work portfolio in the Office of the Chief Records Officer. So it's been slightly expanded to include some of these, although the main focus really still is the appraisal and scheduling part of it, which is one of the reasons why I'm up here to speak about it. But I will go through the results for other parts of the survey as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just go through what some of the questions are and the answers and then speak to some of the specifics of them. But then also at the end I have some information about next steps and how we might take some of this information and use it. One of the questions we've always asked is asking someone's position who's answering it. And this has changed over the years, but you can see it's a preponderance of the people answering this questionnaire are the records officer, which is what we would think would be the most appropriate audience to be answering this questionnaire. So that's a good sign. How long have you worked in records management with the federal government? As you can see, most of the people answering the survey have been doing their job for at least 3 years. We do see lots and lots of new people. I met a couple new people today, but you can see that the bulk answering last year's survey were people had worked in records management for 3 years or more. And one of the questions we always ask too, just to kind of get a sense of the people we're working with and what experience they may have, is it your primary or secondary responsibility? What we always hope to see is a wonderful long bar at the top for primary. You all know how difficult your jobs are as records officers, for those of you out there who are in that position. It is really great to see that at least amongst those answering this survey, that 80% of them, it's their primary responsibility. And one of the things we always want to establish a baseline in looking at, for a number of reasons, both for the survey and just to sort of generally see how many agencies are submitting schedules. We always ask if your agency happened to have submitted a schedule for approval within the last year or two covered by the survey. And you can see about 60% of the people who answered this survey had submitted a schedule. We also ask if they've personally submitted it, just to see kind of how involved they might be in the process themselves. And again, you can see the preponderance of people have worked, at least submitted that schedule, if not worked on it themselves. One of our primary questions we always ask, and it's really kind of is a core issue that we face every year, and that is, did the time that it was taken to approve your submitted record schedule, was it satisfactory? As you can see, the graph has changed. We had a lot of good answers in the parts of the bar graph that we like to see. Here we see a much more variable situation. We had a fairly small number strongly agreeing that it was done rapidly, you know, a little over 35% saying they agreed, but you have some fairly large numbers in the disagree, strongly disagree, which indicates that we have still have an ongoing issue with the approval time that it takes to approve record schedules. So I wanted to stop for a minute and talk a little bit about that and give a little context. As many of you who have been coming to the Bridge for the last few years know, we have been working for the last 4 or 5 years on improving the processing time to have record schedules approved, focusing a lot on what we call our backlog schedules, those that are 2 years old or older. So I'm not going to go through sort of the whole history of where we stood with that, but just to give a little context, I wanted to explain some of the good things that have happened with those numbers. For example, last year we completed about 500 schedules, which is somewhat more than we have in many years. There have been years in the past with more done than that, but that's a fairly substantial number that were completed. I also mentioned backlog, 2 years old and older. I stood up on the stage a few years ago and talked about how we were launching an initiative to improve that. At that point, we had over 200 schedules that were 2 years old and older. And right now, I got the numbers from this morning, there's only 21 of them. And I happen to know that 4 or 5 of those are out for internal review in NARA. A couple others are going up for signature. So within a month or so, that number will be even lower. So that's been a significant achievement for us, and we will, you know, always be looking at those numbers and seeking to improve them. And just to give a little more context, for last year, non-backlog schedules, the average time they were done was within 10 months. And then also for non-backlog schedules that were submitted last year, about 40% of them were done in the same year. So these numbers are an improvement over where things stood a couple of years ago, but also I recognize that probably in some ways it's never going to be fast enough, and there's always room for improvement. So what we take from that is not so much like, well, we're never going to improve these numbers, or we're never going to be able to satisfy anyone. You know, we do think that there is always going to be a certain sense that they're not done fast enough. But what we do is we have continually looked at ways of improving that and always seek to improve those numbers. It's everything from, you know, small things like these. We discuss these numbers at most of our biweekly supervisor meetings with the appraisal teams. The appraisal teams themselves will talk about their numbers, especially their backlog numbers, but their overall numbers at their biweekly meetings. Lots of charts and graphs being put up. And we are, you know, continually looking at these numbers and seeking to improve them. That being said, I realize for anyone sitting out there who did not get one done in 10 months, who's maybe one of the 21 in the backlog, that may not be enough. What I encourage you always to do are a couple things. One, if you have specific concerns about a specific schedule, whether or not it's a couple years old, a few years old, or even one you submitted yesterday, if you need a priority put on something, we always encourage you to talk with your appraiser and or their appraisal supervisor. We are more than willing to work with what may be somebody's priority. Also, I do periodically have people who come to me directly if they have some concerns. That's fine too. I really do encourage you to talk to the appraisal team supervisor as the first stop, but we are more than willing to work with you and to improve those processing times. Another couple things that are very helpful is the quality of the incoming submission. There is a correlation between that and the processing time. So as much as you can strengthen your incoming submissions and have them in as good a shape as possible, that is always a big help as well. We have a quality control checklist that sort of is like the minimum bar. It's up online. You can find that on our website. It's always good to be looking at those things before you submit schedules. But, and I'll have a little more to say about this at the end too. So one of the other perennial things we ask about is satisfaction with the ERA. And we and this is specifically for scheduling records. I know a lot of you use it for transferring records. This is just about scheduling. And as you can see, there's a fair number that are pretty satisfied and then some who are not. Some of you may have received a questionnaire recently. We are going to be looking at ERA and the business objects, and I've got a little more to say about that later, that may have asked you some specific questions about what might need to be improved, and that hasn't started yet, so if you did not answer that survey or did not receive it, you can still send us information about what you think may need to be improved with ERA and the scheduling function. One of the things we're always curious about is whether or not an agency, if they haven't submitted, why maybe did they not submit a schedule recently? And the slide truncates the answers, but they're basically like, my current record schedule is fine. The second one is I have difficulty with ERA, and then there may be other reasons why. They really range the gamut from resources to inventory records, resources to write the schedules. There's a variety of reasons there. One of the other things we had initiated several years ago based on this survey was what we call the Report of Records Appraisal Activity. And this is also known colloquially as the Monthly Status Report. And this is usually in spreadsheet form, sent every month to the primary POC for an agency. And it lists the registered schedules that you may have, any pen and ink changes you may have, and any unauthorized destruction cases that are being handled by the appraisal team still. Don's teams took over most of the unauthorized. There's a few legacy ones that we still hold. One of the things we discovered, and I think this is human nature, is that if you're waiting for something, but you have a sense of, you have some understanding of where it is in the process and what steps it may have recently gone through or is you're waiting for, kind of gives you a better sense, and you may feel more comfortable with wondering why something, it's 9 months out and you're still waiting for it. Our goal is that if you have a registered schedule, you should be receiving one of these. We have worked very hard on compliance with this. They go out the first week of the month, depending on, not necessarily the first day, but we give people a week, because sometimes agencies may have 40 or 50 schedules and several people working on them, so it may take a little time to collate the data. If you are not receiving them and you have a registered schedule, what we do is we drop off sending them. Let's say you had 3 schedules, you got them all, they're all done in June. We send you the report for another month, and then we stop sending it. We don't send it every month. There's some agencies that may go 5 or 6 years without submitting a schedule, so we don't want to send an empty report over and over again. But if you do have registered schedules and you're not receiving it, please talk to the supervisor for that team or your appraiser, and you can also come to me as well. Most people, as you can see, virtually everybody minus a couple people find this report helpful. So we would like to make sure you're getting it. One of our classic questions is, do you have a good working relationship with your NARA assigned appraiser? NARA assigned appraiser is going to be one of your primary contacts, and they help with a lot of questions, working on not just schedules, but general records management questions. And we traditionally have seen a very high rate of satisfaction with that. As you can see, it's running close to 90%. Again, if you have any concerns about that, please feel free to let the supervisor know or to let me know. We did take some information from some of the comments that we received and passed along the compliments and are looking at other things that arose from the comment section of this. And when they ask for assistance, they receive a timely response. Again, it's running very high that people have been receiving a timely response. Most of the people who do the appraisal function develop a close working relationship with you all. And often you'll be learning about issues together. We will investigate things, look up things. Somebody may have to go talk to a supervisor. They may not have an instant answer, but people are in my experience, very motivated to help and very motivated to help you with any conundrums that you may uncover as you're doing your job. So then we kind of asked the overall, how satisfied are you overall with NARA scheduling and appraisal services? And again, you can see, you know, the bulk of people are in the highly satisfied and satisfied, with some concerns and unsatisfied, and then a few people with no opinions who may have not just had much exposure to scheduling and appraisal if they haven't been submitting schedules. Then, you know, I talked about how for years the sole focus of this report was the scheduling and appraisal, but then in the comments we were getting things about other things within our portfolio. So we've added in some questions, and this is the results of that. Is, you know, are the communications you receive from NARA's records management program clear? That includes the blog, the RM communications, and there's a strong agreement that they're clear. The last time we did this survey, we had some very pointed comments about the communications in the comment sections, that the RM communications were too long, that there was too much detail in them. So, you know, I distinctly remember when I read that, we happened to have a meeting that afternoon. We were working on an RM communications. And so I said, okay, we had this comment, and we hadn't really started processing the survey, but like, you know, can we make this shorter and more succinct? And everyone's like, no, we need all this information. We really looked at it. We chopped it down in half. And so we, at least in my program, and I would say for all of AC, like we really look at those and look at what can be chopped out, what can be removed. We have sought to give you the information you need, but to also hone it down and use less words and try to make them more succinct. These, while we didn't have a question for these numbers before, so I can't compare, based on the number and depth of the comments last time and how well the top two bars are, I'm thinking there may have been some payoff for those efforts. We also asked this time about the annual move process and how satisfied you are with the support you receive. And again, you can see the numbers are very high and how people are satisfied. The annual move for NARA is one of the core parts of our mission. It's the time during which all the textual and special media records that are housed in the FRCPs throughout the country are moved to, are accessioned. So they move into the National Archives and are, you know, transferred as permanent records. It is a heavy, heavy lift. We coordinate it in our office, but a massive amount of work is done on it in the other parts of the archives. So I'm pleased to see that these numbers are high. And how satisfied are you with NARA communications on the annual move process? And again, you can see it's a high rate of satisfaction. The no opinions are probably people who didn't have any permanent records to transfer. Again, that is something that NARA has worked on in various parts of the agency over the last few years. You know, again, research services, the Federal Records Center program, and agency services. We also did ask a question about the NARA records management courses. Those courses, there's a lot of feedback loops for those. There's evaluations. You know that Gary's been up here on the stage about revamping their curriculum. But we didn't want to leave a program out, so we did ask about it. And you can see the numbers on who had taken them. You know, a lot of people had not taken them, but people don't necessarily take them every year. Of those who had taken them, you can see it's a high rate of satisfaction, and they are always looking to improve and revamp the training. And we asked if anybody had viewed the training materials on NARA's website, and you can see that most people had viewed any type of training materials that we have. And generally, people are satisfied with the training materials. We are in the process of revamping our website. We know it could use work. It could use some reorganization. It could use some weeding out of outdated material, and we are actively working on that. We also asked how satisfied you are with NARA records management guidance products. This includes our bulletins, our FAQs, white papers. Again, this is not the area that I typically do. But you know, we have other representatives here who work on that. But as you can see, there seems to be a high rate of satisfaction with those. So I wanted to talk about some of the next steps. Some of these I've already talked about, but I'll just talk about them a little bit. Again, these are going to primarily focus on my area, even though we asked a bit about training and policy. So for example, I mentioned the monthly status reports. You can contact me directly or the supervisor for that team if you're not receiving them. We would like to just have a 100% compliance with those if you have registered schedules. Also, I mentioned that we had a question about ERA and the request for a records disposition and then the scheduling component of ERA. How's that working for you? Questionnaires were sent out to agencies and to NARA staff. And in March, we're going to be redesigning what's called the business objects, which is essentially the forms. So the online version of the 115, the request for records disposition authority, is going to be examined for in a process. It's it's technically a business process reengineering, although it's going to really focus on the forms itself as opposed to the process. So we will be examining that. IT systems and redevelopment take a while. So while we're starting it in March, to see a new records request for records disposition will take a little while. Also, one of the things we're looking at reinstating is when an agency has a new appraiser coming to the agency, ideally in person, but by phone if we have to, depending on where the person's located, to have like a meet and greet with the records officer. Back in the day when I started, that was the etiquette. You always did these handoff meetings and met the people in person. As life has gotten busier and the work world has gotten busier for people, they have sometimes fallen by the wayside. We have received several comments about that and are looking at reinstating those. Also, I mentioned that we're overhauling our website. I'll just focus on we are doing a pretty heavy-duty redesign of the scheduling and appraisal part of the website. I met last week with the couple people who are working on it. What we hope to do is streamline things, have things more topically oriented. We're going to reinvigorate the old disposition of Federal Records Handbook and use a lot of that material so that it's topically oriented, and get rid of some of the, or change some of the bars on the side. If you open up the website now, there's a lot coming at you on one page, and we're seeking to streamline that over this fiscal year. Also, we did what we call a big bucket study. We have had a lot of concerns and qualms about big bucket schedules. How are they being implemented in agencies? There's a lot of sort of mythology around it. So in talking with my teams, I felt like we really needed to delve into the issue, not dismiss anyone who had concerns about it, but not just think we kind of understood what was going on with them. So the General Records Schedule team did a study. They went out to several agencies, out to the record centers, talked to our accessioning people, and it's a big report. I'll admit I've only made it partway through it, with a lot of recommendations about how NARA might improve its guidance on big bucket schedules, how it might improve its guidance to agencies. We're looking at potentially doing some implementation guidance on helping agencies implement big bucket schedules. So the first step was the study. The next step will be the follow-on actions. So once we get that in more final form, we will come back and present on that. I would be remiss, I think, if I didn't talk about the hiring freeze. This will affect our scheduling and appraisal services to you. We had 5 appraiser positions that were unfilled during the hiring freeze. We had, they were in personnel and were being worked on actively. And then when the freeze was instituted, they did not make it through in that last couple of weeks. So those remain unfilled at this moment. But what we did do is we immediately began reallocating work across team lines within the appraisal teams, and then also pulling in GRS team members and other team members to help work on schedules. One of our challenges is we can't just drop anyone into working on a record schedule. We have fairly extensive training for people. Our general thing we say is it's like 18 to 24 months to really get self-sufficient in the job, so we can't just pull anybody from anywhere. Also, other teams have their own workload and may have positions that are unfilled. However, we have actively been looking at that and reallocating work where we can. Obviously, the longer-term impact of the hiring freeze and downsizing is unknown, so I do not know what will happen with these 5 unfilled positions. We will just have to wait and see. But I wanted to acknowledge it and say it will have an impact, but we are also proactively taking steps to examine the workload on each of the appraisal teams and reallocate where we can. So this is my contact information. I mentioned a couple times if you had any concerns about feeling free to contact me. And also I wanted to see if anyone here in the audience or online had any questions. Nope. Nope. Okay. Well, looks like there are no questions. I'll give it a minute. How's the online? Is the lag time caught up?
No, but we haven't had anything come up.
Okay. All right, great. Well, thank you for your time.
Yeah. Come on up, Andrea. Oh, sure. This is Mr. Ferriot, the Archivist of the United States, please.
I just wanted to say good morning, and I'm really here to thank you. Thank you for the work that you do every day, because I bet you don't get many thank yous on the job. What you do is tremendously important, not only for managing the work of the government today, but for our history. You are in the process of making sure that our history is recorded and kept and preserved, and so that future generations can hold the government accountable for its actions and for people to learn more about our history through our records. So thank you for what you do. This is a particularly important time as we transition to a new administration, 4,100 new political appointees coming to town. Your responsibility in terms of ensuring that those people are trained about the rules and regulations around records management gives you an opportunity to pass on the importance of maintaining and preserving our records. So thank you very much for what you do.
We wanted to make one quick announcement. I want to have Andrea Shear, one of our account managers, come up from the Federal Record Center program, because before the next BRIDG meeting, which is in April, early April, the agency disposition profiles will go out to each agency. Andrea, can you come up just for a couple of seconds in case we have, we've been doing them now for the last 3 years, and if you can tell folks what to look for in those.
Yeah, so my name is Andrea Shear. I work out of the Philadelphia Record Center, and a lot of you probably are aware that every year it's like a springtime thing that we do. The National T&D group puts together, it's a summary of where your agency stands with respect to the disposition of records. So this comes out in springtime. This year I think we're going to be releasing it on, I think last year we did it April 1st. It was our April Fool's joke. I think it's going to follow maybe the 2nd or 3rd. I think you'll receive a notice, though, an official notice on the last day of March, and then following that you'll get this summary report. That'll come directly to the senior agency official, and it'll be copied to the agency records officer, and then it'll also be copied to some other people, the account managers and everything, so that we can answer questions that you might have. So I'm here if you have any questions about the profile. I'll be happy to answer any questions for you.
Andrea, can you just maybe address some of the new changes that are going to be presented this year?
Well, actually, there are no real changes to the profile itself this year. The big change that came, I think it was last year, was we split the tobacco litigation disposals out. We're keeping that on, so you can see, and we had added at that time, there was a block that showed movement from the previous year to this year. So we'll show disposals that you may have done for tobacco litigation. And it's just a way, it's really your dashboard to see how you're doing in terms of disposals or accessioning and that kind of thing. And as well, and this is no change from before, we'll show you the cost of disposals, and then what that cost is if you don't dispose of records, with the annual storage cost based. We fix the price of storage, as you know, that is not a fixed price, but we kind of take that out to 10 years to show you, the cost savings of disposing of records in a timely fashion. But there basically is no change to the format of the report.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Are there any other questions?
Let me just add on a couple of comments. The disposal report is vitally important. We provide that to all of our customers so you can make intelligent choices. And I think the impetus of this is to really help move agencies to concur for records that are eligible for disposal. The till lift was a big impetus for all of us. That's now, we're almost seeing the taillights of that. But certainly there's a lot of records eligible for disposal that are pending your approval. There's a cost savings for doing so. A 2-year payback is the average, so we encourage you to take these reports really seriously and take appropriate action.
Anything else? Thank you.
So this has been quite the meeting. We had bonus content from the Federal Record Center program. Thank you, Andrea, and thank you, David Weinberg, the director of the FRCP, and a cameo from the Archivist of the United States. So in case this may be your first BRIDG meeting, that doesn't happen every time. So yeah, we're very pleased to have him wander into the McGowan and say a few words to all of you, and I couldn't agree more with what he said in his remarks. Thank you all for everything you do. It's been a really difficult time, we understand, with the transition, and it's not going to get any easier as we go forward with 4,000 political appointees coming on board. We have a lot to do with training and making sure that there is awareness for records management and the important issues, not just with the records officers, but at the senior agency official level, higher up in the agencies. And we stand by, we are ready. Please invite us over to your agencies. Meet and greets, Maggie talked about them with the appraisal staff and meeting with the records management programs, but we are also here to help you make some introductions and build some awareness about requirements around record keeping with the senior agency officials and political appointees as they come on board. So please do not hesitate to contact us and get us involved. Our next meeting is in April, and between now and then, I encourage you to send us comments via RM Communications, the email address from which you received the invite for this meeting. We particularly would like to hear if there are agenda items, issues, topics that you would like to discuss. Maybe join us up here on the stage and present to the rest of your colleagues. Maybe some of the best practices and lessons learned as you do implementation are always a big hit. We're very good at doing policies and releasing guidance and FAQs, but as we sort of touched on in a couple of areas today in our briefings, implementation and what we do in our oversight program to assess implementation is something that we're equally focused on, and we want to share some of the lessons learned and best practices that you have around implementation of the various policies and guidance that affect records management. So please let us know if there are things that you want us to talk about or you would like to co-present or present to the group. So in the meantime, between now and April 11th, please let us know and look for an agenda for the next meeting. Will probably come out around the same time as the disposition profile, around April 1st. So please get in touch with us before then if there's anything specific you would like to hear on the next agenda in April. So with that, we met our prime objective, which is to finish before noon so everybody can go have lunch. And with that, we are adjourned until next time. Thank you all for coming.